The Volnorian Empire had been conquering worlds for almost 100 years. Their warships were massive and powerful. Their soldiers were tall, covered in hard shells like insects, and they had never lost a single war. When they wanted a planet, they took it. When they wanted slaves, they captured them. The galaxy feared the Velnorians, and the Velnorians enjoyed that fear very much. High Commander Verteth was one of their greatest warriors. He had led invasions on 12 different worlds, and each time he had won easily. He stood 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and eyes that looked like black glass. His voice was deep and cold, and when he spoke, entire civilizations trembled. So when the Velnorian Empire discovered the human colony on Kepler 442b, Verteth was given the honor of conquering it. The humans were a young species. They had only been traveling between stars for about 200 years. Their ships were small. Their weapons were basic. Their bodies were soft and weak, with no claws, no shells, no natural armor of any kind. This would be easy, Verteth thought. This would be quick. He gathered a fleet of 300 warships and traveled across the darkness of space toward the human world. When he arrived, he sent a transmission to the planet below. He wanted the humans to see him. He wanted them to understand what was coming for them. The transmission reached Fort Perseverance, the main military base on Kepler 442b. General Katie Morrison was in the command center when the message arrived. She was a woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and calm eyes that had seen many difficult things. Around her stood her senior officers, all watching the large screen as the alien image appeared. Verteth's face filled the screen. His mandibles clicked together as he spoke, and a translation device turned his words into English. "Creatures of Earth," he said, "I am High Commander Verteth of the Velnorian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have 60 rotations to surrender completely. If you resist, we will burn your cities to the ground. Your men will work in our mines until they die. Your women will serve us. This is not a request. This is your fate. Accept it, and some of you may live. Fight us, and you will all be destroyed." He paused, waiting for the fear to show on their faces. He had seen this moment many times before. Some species cried. Some begged. Some tried to negotiate. All of them, eventually, gave up hope. But the humans did something Verteth had never seen before. Colonel Danny Webb, a stocky man with gray at his temples, made a strange sound. It started small like a cough, but then it grew louder. His shoulders began to shake. Major Lisa Grant, standing next to him, covered her mouth with her hand, but she could not hide the smile spreading across her face. Then Captain Megan Cole started laughing. Then Lieutenant Sam Harris. Then everyone. The entire command center filled with laughter. Verteth stared at the screen, his compound eyes narrowing in confusion. This was not possible. This was not how conquered species behaved. Were these creatures insane? Did they not understand what stood before them? "You laugh?" Verteth said, his voice rising with anger. "You dare to laugh at the Velnorian Empire? Do you not understand what I am? Do you not see the fleet behind me? I have 300 warships ready to reduce your world to ash." General Morrison wiped tears from her eyes. She took a deep breath, trying to control herself, but the smile would not leave her face. She stepped forward, closer to the screen, and looked directly into Verteth's alien eyes. "Oh, we understand perfectly, Commander," she said. "We see your ships. We see your soldiers. We know exactly what you are. Then why do you laugh?" Verteth demanded. Morrison glanced back at her officers. Colonel Webb was still chuckling. Major Grant had given up trying to hide her amusement. These were soldiers who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. They were not afraid. They were excited. "We laugh," Morrison said, turning back to the screen, because we have been waiting for this. We have been out here in the galaxy for 200 years, meeting other species, trading with them, learning about them. And do you know what we discovered? We discovered that most species in this galaxy have never really had to fight for anything. Varteth's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Velnorian Empire has conquered 17 star systems. We have fought more wars than your species can count. No, Morrison said, shaking her head. You have won battles. That is not the same thing. You have always had bigger ships, more soldiers, better weapons. You have always had the advantage. You have never truly had to fight. She paused, and her smile faded slightly. Her eyes became harder, colder. We have, she said quietly. For 10,000 years, we fought each other. We killed each other in ways that would make your soldiers sick. We burned cities and poisoned lands and invented weapons that could destroy entire nations. We learned how to fight when we were outnumbered. We learned how to win when we had nothing. We learned that war is not about who has the biggest army. War is about who is willing to do whatever it takes to survive. Varteth said nothing. For the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar. It was a small feeling buried deep in his chest. He did not recognize it at first because he had never felt it before. It was doubt. You think you are predators, Morrison continued. You think you are coming to hunt us. But you are wrong, Commander. You are not the hunters here. You have just walked into the territory of the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever seen. And we do not surrender. We do not beg. We do not run. She leaned closer to the screen. We fight. And we win. And when we are done with you, the rest of the galaxy will finally understand why they should have left us alone. Varteth cut the transmission. The screen went black. In the command center. General Morrison turned to face her officers. The laughter had stopped now. Everyone was serious, focused, ready. All right, she said. They wanted a war. Let's give them one they will never forget. Colonel Webb stepped forward. Orders, General? Morrison looked at the map of the planet, at the positions of their troops, at the defenses they had been preparing for years. She thought about her grandfather, who had told her stories of old Earth wars. She thought about the history of her species, written in blood and fire and stubborn refusal to die. Contact Admiral Palmer, she said. Tell him to begin Operation Welcome. And tell our people to get ready. The Velnorians are about to learn why you never pick a fight with humans. Outside, the stars shone coldly in the black sky. Somewhere out there, 300 alien warships were preparing for what they thought would be an easy conquest. They had no idea what was coming. Admiral Chris Palmer stood on the bridge of the carrier Endurance, watching the stars through the massive window. He was a tall man, thin and quiet, with the kind of face that never showed what he was thinking. He had served in the human fleet for 30 years, and he had been waiting for this moment his entire career. The Velnorians were coming. 300 warships against his fleet of 84. By any normal calculation, the humans should surrender. They should beg for mercy. They should accept their fate and hope the aliens would be kind. But Chris Palmer had studied history. He knew what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. And he knew that numbers did not always decide who won a war. He called a meeting in the war room. His senior officers gathered around the large table, their faces serious but not afraid. Captain Megan Cole stood near the door, her arms crossed. Lieutenant Commander Sam Harris sat at the table, reviewing data on his tablet. A dozen other officers filled the room, all of them ready to hear what their admiral had to say. I will not lie to you, Palmer began. The Velnorians have us outnumbered almost 4-1. Their ships are bigger. Their weapons are more powerful. Their armor is thicker. If we fight them the way they expect us to fight, we will lose." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But we are not going to fight them the way they expect." He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed images from human history, battles fought long before anyone had dreamed of traveling to the stars. "The Velnorians have studied us," Palmer said. "They know how many ships we have. They know what weapons we use. They know that our bodies are weak and our technology is inferior. What they do not know is this." The display changed to show an ancient battle. Thousands of soldiers in bronze armor stood in a narrow pass between mountains, facing an army of hundreds of thousands. "This is Thermopylae," Palmer said. 300 warriors against an empire of millions. They held that pass for 3 days, killing so many enemies that the ground was covered in bodies. They all died in the end, but they showed the world that a small force with courage and strategy could stand against impossible odds. The display changed again. A frozen city, ruined buildings, soldiers fighting in the snow. "Stalingrad," Palmer continued. "One city refused to fall. The defenders were starving, freezing, dying by the thousands every day. But they did not surrender. They fought for every street, every building, every room. And in the end, they won." More images appeared. Jungles and mountains and deserts. Small groups of fighters facing massive armies. Throughout our history, we have faced enemies who were stronger than us, who had more soldiers than us, who had better weapons than us. And again, we found ways to win. Not because we were more powerful, but because we were more stubborn, more creative, more willing to do whatever it took to survive. Captain Cole spoke up. "The Velnorians have never lost a war. Their tactics have worked for 100 years. Why would they change now?" Palmer smiled slightly. "That is exactly the problem. They have never had to adapt. They have never faced an enemy who did not fight by their rules. They believe that war is simple. You have more ships, you win. You have bigger guns, you win. They do not understand what we understand." "And what is that, sir?" Lieutenant Harris asked. "That war is not about strength," Palmer said. "It is about will. It is about who wants to win more. It is about who is willing to suffer more, sacrifice more, endure more than the other side." He looked around the room at his officers. "The Velnorians want to conquer us. But we are fighting for our homes, our families, our survival. We have everything to lose, and that makes us more dangerous than any fleet." He brought up a tactical display showing the space around Kepler 442b. "Here is what we are going to do. The Velnorians expect us to meet them in open battle. They expect us to line up our ships and fight them head-on. Instead, we are going to disappear." The officers exchanged confused looks. "Disappear, sir?" Cole asked. Palmer nodded. "We will power down our ships and hide in the asteroid belt on the far side of the system. The Velnorians will arrive and find nothing. No fleet waiting for them. No resistance. They will think we have surrendered or fled. And then?" Harris asked. "And then they will get comfortable. They will spread out their fleet to support the ground invasion. They will lower their guard. And when they are at their most vulnerable, we will strike." He zoomed in on the orbital approach to the planet. General Morrison's ground forces have spent the last 3 years preparing for this. The approach lanes are filled with mines. Thousands of them, too small for Velnorian sensors to detect easily. When their ships try to reach bombardment range, they will fly straight into a trap. "How many mines?" Cole asked. "Enough to hurt them," Palmer said. "Enough to make them afraid. And while they are dealing with the mines, while their fleet is scattered and confused, we will come out of hiding and hit them with everything we have." He turned off the display and looked at his officers. "I know this plan is risky. I know some of us will die. But this is what humans do. We find the weakness in our enemy. We use their confidence against them. We fight dirty when we have to, and we never, ever give up. Lieutenant Harris raised his hand. Sir, what if it does not work? What if they are too strong? Palmer was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke in a calm, steady voice. Then we make them pay for every inch of space they take. We make this victory cost them so much that they think twice before attacking another human world. We show the galaxy that humanity is not prey. He paused. But it will work. I have faith in our people. I have faith in our history. We have been winning impossible battles for 10,000 years. This is just one more. The officers nodded, their fear replaced by determination. Get to your ships, Palmer ordered. We have work to do. And remember, the Velnorians think they know what war is. They are about to learn that they know nothing at all. As the officers filed out of the room, Captain Cole stopped beside the Admiral. Do you really believe we can win this? She asked quietly. Palmer looked out the window at the distant stars. I believe that our ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. I believe they crossed oceans in wooden boats and conquered mountains with their bare hands. I believe that somewhere in our blood, there is something that refuses to die. He turned to face her. So yes, Captain, I believe we can win this. Because giving up is simply not something humans know how to do. Cole nodded and left the bridge. Admiral Palmer stood alone, watching the stars, thinking about all the battles that had come before. Somewhere out there, the Velnorian fleet was approaching, confident in their coming victory. They had no idea that they were about to face the most stubborn species in the galaxy. The Velnorian vanguard arrived exactly when they said they would. High Commander Varteth believed in precision. He believed in order. He believed that a proper military force should move like a machine, every part working perfectly together. This belief had served him well for many years. About 40-7 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They appeared in a flash of blue light, their massive hulls gleaming against the black of space. Each ship was bigger than anything the humans had ever built. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a city in seconds. The flagship, called Eternal Dominion, was the largest of all. A mountain of metal and power with Varteth himself standing on its bridge. He looked out at the space before him and saw nothing. The human fleet was gone. No ships waited to challenge him. No defensive platforms floated in orbit. The planet Kepler-442b hung in the darkness, blue and green and seemingly undefended. Where are they? Asked his tactical officer, a younger Velnorian named Kethel. His mandibles clicked nervously as he studied his screens. Varteth said nothing for a long moment. He had expected some resistance. He had expected the humans to at least try to fight. This was disappointing. They have fled, he finally said. Or they are hiding on the surface, hoping we will show mercy. He made a sound that was the Velnorian equivalent of a laugh. They will learn that the Empire shows no mercy to cowards. Should we scan for their fleet? Kethel asked. Vor single quotes TETH waved one of his forearms dismissively. Why waste the effort? They have 80 ships against our 300. Even if they are hiding somewhere in the system, they pose no threat. We will deal with them later. For now, begin the invasion. He gave the order, and the vanguard began to move toward the planet. The ships spread out slightly, taking up bombardment positions. Standard procedure. Standard tactics. Everything by the book, just as the Empire had always done. The first destroyer to reach optimal range was called Sword of Conquest. It was a veteran ship, part of many successful invasions. Its captain was eager to begin the attack. To show the humans what happened to species that defied the Empire, the Sword of Conquest exploded without warning. One moment it was there. Weapons powering up, crew preparing for bombardment. The next moment, a brilliant flash of light filled the screen, and the ship was gone. Just gone. Nothing left but debris and fire. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Verteth stared in disbelief. What happened? Before anyone could answer, another explosion. Then another. 3 more destroyers vanished in blossoms of flame. "Mines!" Kethel shouted, his voice high with panic. "The orbital approach is full of mines. Thousands of them." Verteth grabbed the edge of his command console. "That is impossible. Our sensors would have detected them." "They are too small," Kethel said, his claws dancing across his controls. "They are tiny, no bigger than a Velnorian fist. But they are everywhere. There must be tens of thousands of them spread across the approach lanes." Another ship exploded. Then 2 more. The perfect formation of the Vanguard was falling apart as captains tried to avoid the invisible death floating in space. Ships crashed into each other. Weapons fired wildly, trying to destroy mines they could barely see. Verteth watched his fleet being torn apart by enemies too small to fight. This was not war as he understood it. This was not honorable combat between warriors. This was something else entirely. "All ships, full stop," he commanded. "Do not advance any further until we have cleared a path." The surviving ships halted their approach. They began launching scanning drones, trying to map the minefield. But the drones kept being destroyed by the mines they were trying to find. It was like trying to count grains of sand in a storm. "How did they do this?" Verteth asked quietly. "How did they hide so many weapons in space without us knowing?" Kethel shook his head. "The mines have no power signatures when they are dormant. They only activate when a ship gets close. Our sensors are designed to find ships and stations, not tiny pieces of metal floating in the void." Verteth's mandibles clicked slowly as he thought about this. The humans had known they could not win in a direct fight, so they had not tried. Instead, they had turned space itself into a weapon. They had been patient, careful, clever. He was beginning to understand what General Morrison had meant when she said humans fought differently. "Sir," Kethel said, "we have lost 11 ships. The rest of the Vanguard is holding position, but morale is shaken. The crews are afraid. Afraid of what? Pieces of metal? Afraid of what else the humans might have planned." Verteth stood very still. He thought about all the invasions he had led, all the victories he had won. Every time, the enemy had been predictable. They had fought the way civilized species fought. They had challenged the Velnorian fleet in open battle and lost, as everyone always lost. But the humans were not fighting at all. They were just waiting, watching, letting the Velnorians destroy themselves on invisible traps. "Pull back the Vanguard to safe distance," Verteth ordered. "Have the main fleet begin mine-clearing operations when they arrive. This will slow us down, but we will reach the planet eventually." "Yes, High Commander." "What about the ground invasion?" Verteth thought for a moment. "Send the first wave of dropships through the clearest path we can find. We will establish a foothold on the surface while the fleet deals with the mines." The humans cannot have trapped the entire planet. It was a reasonable assumption, a logical assumption. But as Verteth was starting to learn, human warfare had nothing to do with reason or logic. The dropships launched, carrying thousands of Velnorian soldiers toward the planet below. They wove through the minefield carefully, following the paths that the scanning drones had found. Some were destroyed, but most made it through. When they entered the atmosphere, the soldiers felt confident. They had survived the mines. They had reached the planet. Now they could fight a proper war, soldier against soldier, as it should be. They landed in what seemed like an empty field. The area had been identified as a good staging ground, flat and open with no obvious defenses. The soldiers poured out of the dropships, setting up equipment, Preparing to advance toward the nearest human city, they did not see the hidden cameras watching them. They did not notice the small drones hovering high above, recording their positions. They did not know that 100 miles away, human artillery units were receiving targeting coordinates. The first shells began to fall. 3 minutes after the last soldier left his dropship, the explosions came from nowhere. Fire and thunder erupted across the landing zone, tearing through Velnorian ranks like a storm of death. Soldiers tried to run, tried to find cover, but there was nowhere to hide. The shells kept coming, guided by the drones overhead, adjusting their aim with every shot dot in the command center beneath Fort Perseverance. General Morrison watched the attack on her screen. "Welcome to Kepler 442b, she said quietly. "I hope you survive long enough to regret coming here." The first day of the war was over. The Velnorians had lost 11 ships and 3,000 soldiers. The humans had not lost anyone at all, but this was only the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. The war lasted 3 more months. 3 months of blood and fire and endless death. The Velnorians had the numbers and the technology, but the humans had something else. They had the will to keep fighting no matter how bad things got. High Commander Varteth tried everything. He ordered massive bombardments from orbit, but the humans had hidden their important facilities underground. He sent wave after wave of troops into the mountains, but the soldiers who went in never came back out. He established fortified bases across the planet, but every base was attacked within days, sometimes within hours. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck without warning and vanished without a trace. They knew the land, knew the weather, knew every cave and valley and hidden path. The Velnorian soldiers, who had conquered 17 star systems, found themselves afraid to patrol at night, afraid to leave their bases, afraid of an enemy they could rarely even see. And in space, Admiral Palmer kept his fleet moving. He never let the Velnorians pin him down. He appeared, attacked, and disappeared before they could respond. His ships were faster, and his captains were smarter. Every time the Velnorians thought they had him trapped, he found a way to escape and strike again from an unexpected direction. By the end of the 3rd month, the Velnorian invasion force was broken. They had started with 300 warships and 100,000 soldiers. Now they had less than 100 ships and barely 30,000 troops, most of them hiding in their bases, waiting for an evacuation that many doubted would ever come. Varteth stood alone on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. His flagship had taken heavy damage in the last battle. Half his crew was dead. The ship limped through space, barely able to hold together. Kethel approached carefully. The tactical officer looked exhausted, his carapace dull and cracked from stress. "Aye, Commander," he said quietly. "We have received orders from the Empire. We are to withdraw immediately. The Senate has decided that Kepler 442b is not worth the cost." Varteth did not respond at first. He stared out at the stars, at the planet that had destroyed his career and shattered his belief in Velnorian superiority. How many ships can still make the journey home? He finally asked, 94, if we leave the most damaged ones behind. And the soldiers on the surface? Kethel hesitated. We can only evacuate about half of them. The rest will have to surrender to the humans. Varteth closed his eyes. Surrendering soldiers to an enemy was the greatest shame a commander could face. But what choice did he have? He had led his people into a trap, and now he had to save as many as he could. "Begin the evacuation," he ordered. "Get our people off that cursed planet. We are going home." The Velnorian fleet withdrew from Kepler 442b 3 days later. The humans watched them go, exhausted but victorious. When the last enemy ship jumped into hyperspace, a cheer went up across the planet. They had done it. They had one. General Morrison stood on the surface, looking up at the sky. The sun was rising, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink. It was the most beautiful sunrise she had ever seen. Colonel Webb walked up beside her. He was thinner than he had been before the war, his face lined with new scars and old worries. But he was smiling. "We did it, General," he said. "We actually did it." Morrison nodded slowly. "We did, but it cost us. A lot of good people died for this victory. I know. But they died fighting for something that mattered. They died so that humanity could show the galaxy who we really are." Morrison thought about that for a moment. She thought about all the soldiers who had given their lives, all the pilots who had flown into impossible odds, all the ordinary people who had refused to surrender even when everything seemed hopeless. "What do you think the Velnorians learned from this?" Webb asked. "I think they learned that there are some species you do not want to fight. Some species that are more trouble than they are worth." Morrison looked at him. "I think they learned that humans are one of those species." Far away, across the vast darkness of space, High Commander Verteth arrived home to face the judgment of the Velnorian Senate. He stood before them in the great hall, his damaged armor still showing the scars of battle, and told them what had happened. "We studied their ships," he said. "We studied their weapons. We studied their numbers. And we concluded that they were weak, primitive, easy to conquer. We were wrong." The senators listened in silence. Many of them had never seen Verteth look so defeated. "The humans do not fight the way civilized species fight," Verteth continued. "They do not follow rules. They do not seek honor in battle. They fight to survive, and they will do anything to win. Anything at all." He pulled up images from the war. Burning ships, destroyed convoys, Velnorian soldiers lying dead in places where no enemy was visible. They turned space into a minefield. They turned their planet into a trap. They attacked us every moment of every day, from directions we never expected, using tactics we had never seen. And when we had them outnumbered and outgunned, they still found ways to beat us. The High Chancellor leaned forward. "What do you suggest we do now, Commander? Should we send a larger fleet? Should we return with overwhelming force?" Verteth shook his head. "No, we should do what wise hunters do when they encounter something more dangerous than themselves. We should leave humanity alone. We should find easier prey. And we should pray to our gods that they never decide to expand in our direction." The Senate chamber was silent for a long moment. "You are saying," the Chancellor said slowly, "that we should fear these creatures? These soft, short-lived beings with no claws and no armor?" "Yes," Verteth replied simply. "I am saying exactly that. I have fought many species across many worlds. I have never faced anything like the humans. They are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest or the most advanced. But they are the most stubborn. And that stubbornness makes them more dangerous than any enemy we have ever faced." The Senate agreed to leave humanity alone. The Velnorian Empire, which had never lost a war, officially declared the campaign against Kepler 442b to be strategically unnecessary and moved on to easier targets. But the news of what had happened spread across the galaxy. Other species heard about the humans who had laughed at an empire's war cry. They heard about the impossible victory, the tactics that seemed like madness, the sheer refusal to surrender. And for the first time, the galaxy began to understand that there was something different about these strange creatures from the small, blue planet called Earth. Back on Kepler 442b, life slowly returned to normal. The cities were rebuilt. The farms were replanted. The soldiers came home to their families, carrying memories they would never forget. General Morrison retired a year later. On her last day in uniform, she visited the memorial that had been built for the soldiers who had died in the war. Thousands of names were carved into black stone, each one representing someone who had given everything to protect their home. She stood there for a long time, reading the names, remembering the faces. "Thank you," she whispered to the dead. "You showed the galaxy who we are. You showed them that humanity does not bow to anyone. And because of you, they will think twice before threatening us again." The wind blew across the memorial, carrying the scent of flowers that grew around its base. Katie Morrison smiled, turned, and walked away into a future that her fallen soldiers had died to protect. The war was over. The humans had won. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, the Valnorian Empire was very, very quiet. It would be a long time before anyone tried to conquer humanity again. 5 years after the destruction of Covenant Station, representatives from 32 species gathered on a new station in neutral space. It was called Harmony Station. The name was perhaps too hopeful, given the complicated history that had brought them all there. Captain Amy Novak, now humanity's senior diplomat, stood at the main window and watched shuttles arrive from dozens of different worlds. She thought about Daniel Price and how proud he would have been to see this moment. "Quite a crowd," said a familiar voice behind her. She turned to find Admiral Hayes approaching. The Admiral had retired from active service, but still carried herself like a soldier. She had spent the past year helping to train the new Interstellar Peacekeeping Force, a joint military group that answered to no single species. "Bigger than I expected," Amy admitted. "We have representatives from every former Council species, except the Karath extremists. And them? Still hiding in their home system. Still refusing to accept what has happened," Amy sighed. "Some people cannot let go of the past." Hayes nodded slowly. "Give them time. Another generation, maybe two. The anger will fade." The two women walked together toward the main assembly hall. Along the way, they passed beings of every shape and kind. The insect-like Vrix, now humanity's closest trading partners. The Talani, who had become enthusiastic supporters of the New Order. The Moravians, still complaining about lost profits, but taking part anyway. They even passed a few Karath. These were moderates who had broken with their government's extreme position and joined the growing group of cooperating species. The assembly hall was huge, built to hold beings of all sizes and needs. At its center was a round table where representatives would sit as equals. No raised seats, no positions of power. President Bishop had demanded that detail. "No one sits above anyone else," she had said. "That is the whole point." The president herself was there now, moving through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting representatives and solving last-minute problems. She caught Amy's eye and called her over. "How does it look?" Bishop asked. "As good as we could hope, Madam President. There is still some tension between the Vrix and the Moravians over trade rules. The Karath moderates are nervous about being seen as traitors by their homeworld. But overall, I think we are ready." Bishop nodded, her expression thoughtful. 5 years ago, I gave the order to destroy the old Galactic Order. I have questioned that decision every day since. No one else could have made it. That does not mean it was right." The president looked out at the gathered representatives. "But maybe this is our chance to prove it was. To show that something better can be built from the wreckage." The assembly was called to order. Representatives took their seats at the round table, and President Bishop rose to speak. "Friends," she began, using that word on purpose to show the relationship she hoped to build. "We are here because the old way of doing things failed. The council was started with good intentions, but it became something else. It became a tool of fear and control that stopped entire species from growing." She paused to let her words settle. "Humanity broke that system, and I will not pretend we did not cause great suffering in doing so. Ships were destroyed. Lives were lost. Civilizations were shaken to their foundations. We did what we believed we had to do, but that does not mean we are proud of all of it. What we are proud of is what we have built since. Not conquered, built. Together, with partners who chose to join us, we have created something the galaxy has never seen. A true community of equals. She gestured at the assembled representatives. Every species at this table has the same voice, the same vote, the same rights. No one can be punished without fair process. No one can be stopped from growing and expanding peacefully. These are not human principles. They are universal principles that belong to everyone. Today, we make this community official as the Interstellar Congress, not a government that rules over its members, but a place where problems can be solved, cooperation can be organized, and shared challenges can be faced together. She raised her hand, and around the table, representatives of 32 species did the same. This gesture had been chosen because it existed in some form in almost every culture. We promise ourselves to peace, Bishop said, to equality, to the idea that every thinking being in this galaxy has value and deserves the chance to reach their full potential. This is the future we choose. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, there was celebration. Beings from different worlds mixed and talked and found things they had in common. Amy found herself talking with Keth, the Talani who had become one of humanity's closest friends. You humans have a saying, Keth observed, his translator carrying a hint of amusement. Be careful what you wish for. I wonder if you understand yet what you have done. Amy smiled. What do you mean? You set out to prove that humanity deserved a seat at the table. Instead, you built a new table. Keth's ears twitched. And now every species in the galaxy looks to you for guidance, for leadership. Whether you wanted that responsibility or not, you have it now. Amy thought about this. I suppose we do. But we do not have to carry it alone. That is the whole point. Sharing the weight, working together. Very human of you, Keth said. Always so eager to share. He made a sound that his translator called a chuckle. It is strange, you know. When the Council decided to cage humanity, they did so because they feared what you might become. They saw your ability to destroy and assumed you would turn it against them. And they were right to see the ability. But they were wrong about what you would do with it. Keth looked down at the celebrating crowd. You could have crushed us all, become the new masters of the galaxy. Instead, you chose this. Amy followed his gaze. Across the hall, she saw humans laughing with Rix traders, discussing ideas with Moravian money experts, sharing drinks with Kareth moderates who had taken a big risk by coming here. Maybe that is the real lesson, she said quietly. It is not about what you can do. It is about what you choose to do with that power. Keth made that chuckling sound again. Very human indeed. The celebration went on late into the station's artificial night. But Amy slipped away eventually, finding her way back to the main window. She stood there alone, looking out at the stars. The same stars that Daniel Price had looked at with such hope so many years ago. We did it, Daniel, she whispered. Not the way you would have wanted, but we did it. We found our place among the stars. The universe did not answer. It never did. But somewhere out there on hundreds of worlds, beings of every kind were looking up at those same stars with something they had never felt before. Hope. Hope that the future might be better than the past. Hope that working together could beat fighting. Hope that the galaxy's darkest days were finally overdought. It was not the ending anyone had expected. But it was, perhaps, the ending the galaxy had always needed. And for humanity, the young species that had been told to know their place, it was just the beginning.